Welcome back, everyone. My name is Leah Vachani, and I'm so glad you're back again today. We have an incredible guest. I'm going to introduce Dr. Sierra Bains, who is a double board certified functional medicine doctor and hormone and fatigue specialist. Yes, ladies, you heard that right. I said fatigue specialist, so listen up. She believes in marrying the best of science with the body's own ability to heal so you can feel whole again. She's lived the path herself, spending over 5 frustrating years looking for answers to her chronic illness until she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2021. Since then, it has been her calling to help others who have tried everything and finally heal when traditional medicine alone has let you down. Her passion for evidence-based natural remedies and deep understanding of the interconnectedness of the body, mind, and spirit allows her to guide others on their healing journey with confidence. She doesn't heal, she teaches you to heal herself. Dr. Sierra believes that at the end of the day, healing rarely happens in an office. True healing happens with the choices you make, the nourishment you provide your body, and the mindset you create. Oh my gosh, I love that. That is just so perfect. We need that more than ever right now. Welcome, Sierra. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So we have probably actually thousands of women watching this, and I would venture a guess that 98, 99, maybe even 100% of them complain about fatigue, low energy, all of those things. Most of us watching are approaching 40 or over 40, maybe even well into our 50s, 60s, 70s. So thank goodness you are talking today about combating cortisol, why your energy levels are so low. So you okay if we just dive right in?
Let's do it. It is such a hot topic because it impacts so many of us, and especially for our audience watching. I find oftentimes the common verbiage used is, I just turned 40 and my body stopped working with me. I just turned 50 and I just don't run the same like I used to. And while there are parts of that that's true, you see people that are much older living these really healthy, vibrant lives. And we wonder why they're the outliers. And the keys are really simple. And I know we're going to get into this, but I definitely want to discuss and help our women understand what's going on in the body so they can feel empowered to make change because your age is quite literally just a number. I promise you, I've seen incredible, and I know you have too, incredible transformations in ages 40, 50, 60, 70. Even I work in with a lot of clients in their 70s too. And you can regain that natural vital energy. So let's talk about it.
Absolutely. I mean, I've even seen women in their 90s doing these yoga moves that I can't even do in my 40s. I'm like, what are you doing? What's your secret? Yeah, so let's dive in and let's focus on the energy and the cortisol. And I know cortisol is really closely linked with our hormones. And so as we age, can you just give us a quick overview of how things are starting to change, over 40 and beyond?
For sure. So I think it's important to talk about what cortisol is. We hear it all the time. And what is cortisol? Cortisol is actually a hormone. It is our main stress hormone. It helps us interact with our external environment. It's helping regulate the internal environment to respond to what's going on. Now, back in Neanderthal times, there were tigers chasing us. And when a tiger was chasing us, our body needed a response to keep us alive. And we call this our fight or flight response. And so in times of stress, back thousands and thousands of years ago, we had to run or we had to fight whatever was in front of us. Well, now we live in a beautiful world where our life is a lot more cushy. We have food accessible all the time, and our stressors are typically things that involve, maybe work or partners or other relationships, finances. And typically it's not that a tiger's going to eat us. If that is the case, we need to call somebody. But that fight or flight response still reacts the same way. And so cortisol gets a bad rap. I think it can be actually a really positive thing, right? It's trying to save your life. You be anti-inflammatory, it's a natural painkiller, but it also breaks the body down for blood sugar so that we have energy to function. And typically by the time we hit about 40, and sometimes even younger, I see this, is we've just been in that chronic state of fight or flight for so long. We have not regulated enough, whether it's emotionally or physically with the things that we're eating or things in our environment and our lifestyle that we aren't even aware of that are constantly increasing this cortisol spike. And this can manifest into really high levels of cortisol, or actually what we see as really low levels of cortisol, and that's burnout, where your body can't even keep up anymore. And so over time, if we're stuck in that chronic state of fight or flight and we don't really come out of it, we'll see those levels, cortisol increase pretty high, and then they drop actually very low because we're not able to keep up. And then beyond that, our sex hormones are within the same hormone axis as cortisol. So there's a couple of like parent, granddaddy hormones that make all of them in our main hormone axis. And with time, you know, we'll see things like progesterone and estrogen decline with menopause, and that's okay, that's normal. However, if cortisol is, let's say, the kid in class that is just being annoying, right? In grade school, that kid just needs all the teacher's attention and is just draining resources from the teacher. The other kids don't get to learn as well. They don't get as many resources and they're neglected. Those other kids are things like estrogen and progesterone. Well, you know, maybe they're going to go the path they're going to go no matter what. If the other kid is constantly requiring the teacher's attention, they're just naturally not going to get as many resources. So as we get older, right, it is especially important that we're able to keep balance into the hormone system and not have one hormone dominate over another.
Yeah, I love that analogy, by the way. I've never heard that one before. That makes total sense. And so what I'm hearing from you is that, you know, back hundreds, thousands of years ago, we used cortisol to survive, escape a tiger, whatnot. But nowadays, like that email from our boss, our body treats it like a tiger is still chasing us, right?
Yeah.
But our body hasn't adapted to realize like that's just an email. So we're constantly inundated with stress. So when we're constantly, you know, up leveling that stress, you're saying we can actually burn out, and that cortisol can actually like go whoop. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And that's typically where we see symptoms start to present. So that first initial response where cortisol is high, we think high stress, high cortisol, not always the case, right? So that's actually something you have to test for to know whether you're somebody that's high or low cortisol, because the treatments are very different from a supplemental and diet perspective. Do you want me to touch more on that?
Let's talk a little bit more about like, how do I know? Like, what are symptoms? What if I'm
Yeah.
like, is this me? I don't know. What are the
Yeah.
symptoms? And if I do think I'm struggling, what testing is available and what should I be looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So with higher cortisol, right, it's earlier on in the stages of dysfunction with cortisol, but we'll see things like, you know, poor immunity. We'll see, you know, crashing in the afternoon. We'll see sometimes this pattern where somebody is really awake in the evening time, right? They're tired, but they're wired. You'll have like a second wind typically. You'll start to see muscle mass decrease and, of course, weight gain. That's always a common complaint. But if it keeps going on, we're in that chronic state of fight or flight and we don't have enough resources, that's where we actually start to see things like low blood sugar occur. We'll see libido start to go. We'll see greater levels of inflammation. More significant issues with digestion can occur, like really chronic bloating. We see more mood disorders here. And of course, weight gain. So weight gain applies to both. We cannot necessarily say one is high or low, but really we see the state of exhaustion with the lower cortisol. Because if you think about it, we've just run out of gas and the body's doing everything it can just to stay alive.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, that's really interesting. So how does that tie in? Like if women are struggling with cortisol issues, whether in the beginning stages or further on, how is that playing a role in the menopause hormone health game that we're all entering at some point?
Yes, at some point, it's inevitable and it's a beautiful process. And our journey into menopause is inevitable and also doesn't have to be uncomfortable. Typically, the sicker somebody is, when I say sick, doesn't mean you're bedridden, but if our cortisol is, you know, in a place of dysfunction, our hormones are out of balance, then typically we're going to experience more symptoms because our body isn't able to regulate on its own. And so when we see issues with cortisol, typically what goes hand in hand with that is blood sugar imbalance. And with blood sugar imbalance, that is not a vital sign that we typically test for at a doctor's office, and it's usually missed. But blood sugar is the measure of the amount of glucose in our blood at any time, and it helps us to have energy. Well, in today's society, we see a lot of women with higher blood sugar levels, which leads to things like prediabetes, diabetes, and metabolic syndrome. And those are the things that we want to avoid because it can decrease our life expectancy. So we want to work backwards and say, okay, we're pretty healthy. Like, how do we not have that happen to us, we do need to start to regulate this cortisol system, this nervous system, so we don't develop into problems later on. As far as menopausal symptoms, menopause is the decrease in hormones, and it is natural. But if you're constantly pumping out cortisol, we're constantly utilizing resources, then we're going to feel the effects of lower hormones sooner because we have lower hormone levels sooner. And so these are things you can test for either through a saliva test or a urinary test. You can also do blood work as well, but typically for women, it's not as effective because a blood shot is just a snapshot in time, or blood draw is just a snapshot in time. And we typically want to see markers that are, 2 to 3 months over the course in metabolites.
You're saying saliva gives us more of a big picture.
Yeah, saliva or urine just depends on the case, but yeah, those two give more of a better picture than just blood work alone. I talked to a lot of women who said, "Oh, I ran blood work and my doctor said it was fine." And the two qualms I have about that statement is that one, blood work is just a snapshot, right? It's just the one day, and we have a whole cycle, right? We have a beautiful 28-day cycle on average, whereas men have 24-hour cycles. So those tests work better for them. And then the second qualms I have about that statement is that the blood work levels in standard medicine, this may ruffle some feathers, are not up to date. They were, 30 to 40 years ago, but as our population becomes more and more unhealthy, the normal levels change with the population. And so when we go to compare to what's normal, it's like, sure, you could be normal with the average person in Western society. Is that what you want though? Right? We want optimal. Right. You and I want optimal. Yeah.
So I love that you said that because we're totally normalizing feeling like crap. And I hear time after time women go to doctors, especially women, they go to the doctor and they're like, well, my tests are normal. They said they're in the range. So yeah.
There's a different scope with functional medicine. We use a smaller window, a tighter window, because what optimal is telling us is that your body is able to function and produce the things like hormones that it needs to be producing. And so it really is, you're just giving people awareness that you're not crazy for feeling the way you're feeling, even though somebody told you, oh, your labs look normal. This is normal for your age. It's okay to want better for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the people watching have seen us, me and some other experts talking about the basics, food, diet, nutrition, lifestyle, perhaps supplements, getting sleep, all that. But so we don't need to go into that so much. But I do know that you really focus on digestion, right? In terms of helping with energy levels. I mean, that's kind of your expertise. So I would love to know, like, if you could just name one or two, maybe three things that you are just red flags for women. And you're like, oh my gosh, this woman is, she's suffering from low energy because this is what's going on. Let's dive into that a little bit more.
For sure. A couple of them have to relate to digestion. A couple of them are outside of that, right? We're all one piece. And so the first thing that I look to is somebody's light cycles. And what I mean by that is, what is our light exposure like during the day and at nighttime? And when it comes to cortisol specifically, cortisol is supposed to be high in the morning time, right? It's like our sunshine is supposed to be up throughout the day and then slowly come down because we need energy. And then we're supposed to go to bed and reset. And in our modern world, we are so often exposed to, wake up, alarms blaring, look at your phone. Okay, well, right away, we have just stimulated a blue light response, right? And we've just woken up our system, jolted awake. Okay, whew, all right, body's now kind of fighting in that sympathetic state, right? And then we go about our day and TV's on, or, whatever's happening for the first few hours before the sun even comes up. You've had all that stimulation, right? Cortisol's really high. Well, now let's get on our laptop for 8 hours or computer for 8 hours. And it's just more excessive blue light. We don't have a chance to go outside, or we don't make it a priority. Okay. And this is nobody's fault. There are ways around this, right? And then it's nighttime and we're back on the phone, back on the TV. It's just this constant stimulation. And we don't allow our body time to rest. And so that's the first red flag I see. Somebody's constantly tired. The first thing you can do, just put the phone away at nighttime, like just in 30 minutes. Because what people don't know is that cortisol and melatonin they act as buddies. They're equal and opposite. So when cortisol's high, melatonin's low. Well, we need melatonin to go to sleep, right? And so melatonin is naturally produced when cortisol is lower. So in order to go to sleep better, you actually need to bring cortisol down. So the first thing I always look at is light. In fact, I'm so obsessed with the sun, I named my company after it. The lifestyle company. That's the whole premise of it. Um, Bringing light into, our lifestyle. It's so important. The second thing would be then how we're eating, right? And it's not what we're eating. Notice I didn't say what we're eating. I said how we're eating. And there's two things that come to mind there. The first is, are we eating in a sympathetic state, right? Our tummies, our digestive system has a whole nervous system to itself. Okay, we have our fight or flight response. That's our sympathetic nervous system. And then we have our rest and digest, our parasympathetic nervous system. So if you're in fight or flight, you're not going to digest well. So those are eating really fast, right? Eating super fast, eating distracted, don't have time, eating on the go. I used to do this. I'm guilty. Car meals, oh my goodness, eating in my car. It's better than just not eating at all. True. And also, it's probably why you're bloating after every meal, right? So that's number 2, is how we are eating in a parasympathetic state. And then the third, oh, there's so many. I would say the third thing that I see is how we're interacting in our environment, right? Our perception on the world, our perception with our circumstances. I do really believe in marrying, all the things in the external environment and the physical, right? It's so important to be able to reduce layers of inflammation off the body, but also what's our perception like? Right? Do we have levels of support? Do we have family and friends that care about us? Do we have purpose in the world? Are we driven in a place of just like love? Do we have a basis of what we believe in? It doesn't have to be the same as everybody else, but is there just purpose there? And I find from that, we can actually have a lens that steps away from being in this mindset that things are happening to us and more so they're happening for us. And I really think that's where the holistic lens can be all encompassing, is that I talk to a lot of people about, their traumas or things that have led up to this point. And I always let them know they're validated and that is their experience. And also, those things are in the past. What are we left with? What can we do now in the present to make our future better? And so something I always like to just talk to people about before they even ask about, like, being in my containers is like, what is that worldview like? Like, how is your support system? Like, is this scary? And yes, healing journey can be intimidating. There's a lot you don't know. And also, are you excited about it? Right? Like, how do you feel? So I'd say those are the 3 major lifestyle shifts. Like, if somebody could get those things down, they don't need me.
You're just losing clients left, right, and center because they're being killed.
Yeah, it's a poor business strategy, but really it's like how we heal the world. I joke all the time that my business strategy is terrible. Because it's like I want, the more that we share with people, that's why I love that you're doing this. The more that we share, the more information, the healthier somebody can be, the healthier our world. They get to be an example for people. And I've worked with so many who they're the first person in their family to look at an alternative road. They're the first person in their family to even consider sleep being something that needs to be of high quality, or of the information they're taking in. And that to me is the coolest part.
Well, I think your work and other people's work that's on a similar line is so needed right now, because it seems like the world is only getting to become a more and more stressful place. Besides, aside from having easier accessibility to food, to clean water, to all these things that should be making us healthier, it seems as a society we're dealing with more and more stress, which, as you mentioned, is one of the foremost negative effects on our health. And what I really want to circle back to, that I really like that you said, was that it's perception. And so what I heard from that is that, events are happening all throughout our day, all around us. And it's our perception as to whether we take that in as a stressful event or if we perceive it otherwise. And so what I'm hearing you say is that we can actually shift our whole mindset, our whole experience in everyday life. And then that in turn, if we can perceive events to not be as stressful, or to flip the switch on how we react to things, that we can actually lower our cortisol levels. Is that what I'm hearing?
We can definitely lower our stress response. Yes. I find as people become more and more healthy, in the sense that they're regulated, they have the tools, right? And this doesn't mean everybody has to meditate all day. I don't do that. You don't have to do that, right? I think we get a misconception that means, oh, well, it must be nice. You get to go, run around in your flower garden. That's not how it is, right? I work with a lot of business owners. I'm like, listen, I'm a business owner too. I get it. There's a lot of things that can come up. And in learning to structure your environment in a way that is not no longer stressful, I use the phone example. It's a really easy one. We all have that, right? We can just do little things in our day to help give us more energy for the things that we want to do. Because, like you said, life is going to happen. We have kids, we have families, we have jobs, we have other life events. It's part of the human experience. And so what I try to teach people is utilizing some of these lifestyle tactics and also sometimes supplementation. It can help. But what we're doing is building on top of these habits so that we can learn to respond and not react. And it takes practice and it is a skill. And it's also a way to just go about life a lot lighter. And I know it because I've lived it and I've seen other people do the same, and it is possible.
Yeah, I mean, you've been through a lot and healed yourself through all that. That's amazing. I'm sure
Yes.
a lot of it had to do with your perception. And
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just kind of glazed over it at the beginning. I was given an MS diagnosis back in 2021, and I was in school at the time, and I was told, you have a progressive brain disease. And I also was given another autoimmune diagnosis of Hashimoto's hypothyroidism. My thyroid antibodies were high at the time. And so two autoimmune diagnoses. And the solution I was given after tons of testing, things gone wrong, was a black box medication, which for those unfamiliar, give you depressive and suicidal ideation. And I was like, that is not a life for me. I am far too bubbly for that. And so I remember picking up the prescription, I looked at it, and I threw it in the trash immediately. I knew it was not going to be for me. I didn't know what I was going to do next. And that's where I kind of head down the functional path. But I knew in that moment that I could make the decision to put my health into my own hands. And while I was still scared, I thought I was not going to live for about 3 months. It was a very, very fascinating experience early on in life, um, to just realize our mortality. That I was kind of like, well, I'm going to do the best I can because this is a short-lived time for all of us, and I am going to reduce as much inflammation as possible. And to this day, I do not resonate with either diagnoses. I have not had any significant changes in any MRIs in my brain, and I no longer have thyroid antibodies. And so I would say both are in remission. I do not have either diagnoses. I think I function pretty well. I don't think I have MS. So, and I'm so proud of that because of the lens I had on my own health. And that's what I try to teach people is, again, the past is the past. Like, what are we left with? And how can we make that better?
wow, I mean, that is truly amazing. And the way I hear that is like you were actually given a gift. It probably sounded not so much at the time, but look at you now, look what you've gone through. And the beauty of this also is how many lives you're transforming by sharing that experience and teaching other women, like you said, like you're teaching them, you're not healing them, you're teaching them how to heal themselves, which is very empowering. And I think I could speak for most women watching right now in that when we go to our doctor's office, we get maybe on average, 12 minutes or whatever it is. And usually we're leaving with a prescription because either the doctor doesn't know how to help us or doesn't have time to help us or, some other complex issue within the medical system. But most of us leave feeling like lost and afraid and not sure how to help ourselves. So what you're sharing today, Sierra, is really it's hope, but it's also highlighting that there's so many practitioners out there like yourself too that do have answers. So if you are a woman that's struggling with whatever issue you're struggling with, don't settle. There's a way through everything. There's knowledge. There's you can empower yourself and be an advocate for your health. So that's just I'm so glad you shared that. Is there anything else you wanted to share with our audience regarding what we're talking about today?
I love that. I love that you brought up that there's always a way. I tell people there's always an answer, that it doesn't matter how many specialists you've seen, it doesn't matter what you've been told. If you know intuitively something is not right in your body, there's an answer for it. And typically it just takes a different lens. And there are incredible practitioners in this space, the holistic route, the functional route, whatever you want to pursue, right? Just know there is always an answer. And that is definitely something that I found comforting in providers I had seen. It's, the ones that, and I'll be the first to admit, I don't know everything, but I'm going to do my best to find out for you. I'm going to do my best to, we'll try different tests. We'll try different routes because I'm not going to stop until you feel better. And in doing so, right, you really develop this trust with somebody and a provider. You feel heard, you feel seen, and you feel like, again, they may not be, I'm not God, right? However, I will do everything in my, toolbox. All tools I have, we will deploy them to help somebody. And also then developing a relationship because we're humans, we're not stats, right? It's important to be able to talk to your provider. That's something in my one-on-one, like they have access to me all business hours. Right? You have questions, you can ask me. This isn't a see you in 3 months, hope the supplement works. And even in this space, that can be harder to find. And so just establishing trust in somebody else and also yourself to know that you do know what's going on and you can try things and start to uncover why you're feeling the way you're feeling, because it is not normal to feel as crappy as you've normalized.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the other thing that you touched on that I want to reemphasize is that you are your own individual, unique, complex, amazing system. Like it's a whole bunch of systems happening, and only you truly know if you feel off or you feel like something's not right, then maybe the tests say you're fine, or maybe your doctor says you're fine. But if you know inside that it's nothing, something's not fine, speak up, find your voice. Like this whole summit is about empowering you as an individual woman to step up and to advocate for yourself and to look for answers, because they're out there somewhere. There's a practitioner like Dr. Sierra or someone else that can really help you. And I think, Sierra, you and I are probably aligned in this, is our mission is to make sure that every single woman knows she doesn't have to feel like crap anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
I love
Right,
that.
because we've been there, right? We're like, this isn't right, right? We all come from that place, and learning to just rediscover our own vitality. Men are great, but we are magical creatures. We have a 28-day cycle that quite literally dictates how we can produce and manifest and create. And we can create life if you choose to. We have so many beautiful components in our system, and the fact that we're here is a miracle, right? These trillions of cells working together. And so just know that you can feel this. It sounds so woo woo, I suppose, when you're away from it and you're not there. And I use the tagline on my Instagram that where woo woo meets science, because I know that
I love
sometimes it can get it can get a little touchy feely, like, oh, just be intuitive, right? And also there's data to all of this, and there's things that we're utilizing. But when you get to marry the two of those, when you get to marry the science and the data of all natural holistic remedies, and also get to be in touch with your magical feminine side, like that is where the superpowers lie. And so conceptually, this can be hard for some people to, grasp, and others may be like, yes, that I know what you're talking about. And it starts with some of the lifestyle shifts. It starts slow. It starts with getting higher quality sleep. It starts with how we're putting stuff into our body. And it starts with, what we're putting into our body. And from there, we slowly peel back all these layers of inflammation, and we just get to let our highest, most natural, healthy self live. And that's what I'm going for.
Oh, I love that. And for those of you watching that maybe came here expecting Dr. Sierra to give you like a protocol for how to fix yourself, I love that she did bring up that it is a marriage between, looking at the science, talking to your doctor, getting the tests, measuring things. But it's also the other stuff too of really like looking inside of yourself, in your heart, in your mind, like how are you reacting to things? Are you taking the best care of yourself? Could you be sleeping better? Could you be getting outside into the beautiful sunlight more? Like, Sierra, this was a great holistic overview of where people can start their journey to feeling better. I love it. Oh, and you have a free gift for them.
I
Tell us,
do. I do.
tell us about the stress factor.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because this was a little more conceptual of a conversation, I do have practical tools for people to implement, whether it's on the nutrition side of things, getting higher quality sleep, and also some of the toxins in our environment. And so that is the free gift, is for those that want to start implementing and slowly peeling back those layers of inflammation. As I mentioned, you'll have that available for them.
Amazing. And Sierra, do you work with people in person and online if they're curious to kind of get in touch with you and find out more? How do you
I
work with?
work 100% online. So if they would like to get in touch with me, they can send me an email, they can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn, send me a message, and all of the labs are shipped directly to you. You choose to utilize lab work. If it's blood work, it's done nearby, and we get to have a much more fruitful relationship of having the one-on-one conversations more often. So any questions, I'm an open book for all of it.
Amazing. This was, I mean, we are so blessed to have you here sharing this with us. And I hope that, whoever's taking a golden nugget out of this, share it with a friend too, by the way. If you want them to hear this, like the more women that hear this message and open up the realization that there's a lot more potential to feeling amazing rather than feeling like crap, then Sierra and I have done our work here then. So thank you so much, Sierra. This was fun.
Thank you for having me.